The sound of children crying filled the small Texas home. 6 little faces were huddled together on the living room floor, their eyes red and wide. Their grandmother, Miss Sheila, stood frozen by the door, her trembling hands pressed over her mouth as police lights flashed through the windows. Just hours earlier, her daughter, Takara Glenn Hightower, a loving mother of 6, had been alive, holding her baby in her arms, trying to protect her family. But now, she was gone. Police officers whispered among themselves as they moved through the scene. Takara had been shot by her husband, Gregory Hightower, a U.S. Navy recruiter. He wasn't some stranger. He was the man she had loved, the father of her children. She was still clutching their baby when it happened. Neighbors said they heard shouting before the gunshots rang out. One recalled hearing Takara's terrified voice yell, "Please, not in front of the kids." Moments later, everything went silent until the cries of the baby pierced through the night. That baby, barely 1 year old, was now in the arms of a police officer, covered in a soft blue blanket, staring blankly at the flashing lights outside. As Miss Sheila reached for the child, she whispered, "I'll take care of you all, I promise." But deep inside, her heart broke into 1,000 pieces. She wasn't just taking care of her grandkids, she was stepping into her daughter's shoes after the most unimaginable tragedy. The officer leading the case turned toward her and quietly said, "Ma'am, it looks like she was trying to file an abuse complaint when he came back." Miss Sheila's eyes filled with tears. Takara had been trying to get help. She was in the middle of reporting her husband for abuse when he burst into the house and ended her life. The pain in the grandmother's chest grew heavier. She remembered the last phone call from Takara. That same morning, her daughter's voice had trembled as she said, "Mama, I can't live like this anymore. I'm scared for me and the kids." Now, those words would echo in Miss Sheila's mind forever. As police cars drove away and the night grew still, the grandmother sat on the couch surrounded by her grandchildren. The youngest tugged at her shirt and asked softly, "Grandma, when's Mommy coming back?" Miss Sheila closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "Mommy's in heaven, baby," she whispered. Outside, reporters began to gather. The story spread quickly across Houston. The Navy recruiter who killed his wife while she was holding her baby. To the world, it was shocking. To the family, it was unbearable. But this wasn't the first time danger had come to Takara's door. For months, she had been trying to escape a cycle of fear and pain. Friends said she had been reaching out for help, talking to counselors, contacting the police, and confiding in close family members. But the system moved too slowly. Now, 6 children were left without a mother, and Miss Sheila had to find the strength to raise them all while fighting for justice. She walked through the empty hallway of her daughter's home that night, every step echoing against the walls. Photos of Takara and her kids lined the corridor. Smiling faces, birthdays, graduations, little moments frozen in time. She paused in front of one photo, Takara in her navy blue dress, her arm around Gregory, both smiling proudly. "He looked like such a good man," she whispered to herself. But what happened behind closed doors told another story. Later that week, when Miss Sheila sat down for an interview, her hands shook as she spoke. He was supposed to protect her, not destroy her. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she continued. "Now, I have 6 kids to raise, and every time I look into their eyes, I see my daughter." She had filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Navy, blaming them for not acting when Takara had reported abuse earlier. She believed that if the Navy had intervened, her daughter might still be alive. The community rallied behind her, holding candlelight vigils and sharing Takara's story on social media. The words "Justice for Takara" began trending across local networks. Still, every night when the house grew quiet and the children finally fell asleep, Miss Sheila would sit alone on the porch, staring into the dark Texas sky.
The pain was too heavy to carry, yet she couldn't let go. And deep inside, she wondered, what really happened in those final moments before the gunfire? Because there were whispers among neighbors that something didn't add up. Police had said Gregory turned himself in calmly, but others claimed they saw someone else near the house right before the shooting, a figure running away in the dark. Could there be more to this story than anyone realized? Miss Sheila didn't know, but one thing was certain. She would not stop until she uncovered the full truth about what happened to her daughter. As she rocked the baby to sleep that night, a single tear rolled down her cheek. The wind outside howled softly, almost as if it carried Takara's voice, whispering for justice. The next morning, the house was quiet, but the silence didn't bring peace. It felt heavy, like the air itself carried memories of the night before. The children still didn't understand. The youngest kept calling for their mother, while the older ones tried to comfort each other, pretending to be strong. Miss Sheila stood at the kitchen counter staring at the family photo pinned to the refrigerator, Takara smiling with all 6 kids around her. It was taken just a few months ago. The photo felt alive, full of warmth and laughter. But now all of that had been ripped away. Her phone rang. It was a detective from the Harris County Sheriff's Office. "Ma'am, we're still gathering evidence, but I wanted to let you know your daughter was in the process of filing a domestic abuse complaint when the shooting happened. She had contacted the Navy's Family Services Office too."
Miss Sheila gripped the phone tightly. Her heart sank. She already knew her daughter had been scared, but hearing it confirmed broke her all over again. "She tried to get help," she whispered, "and nobody listened." The detective's silence said everything. Later that day, a neighbor named Carla came by. Her eyes were red and puffy. "I still can't believe it," she said, handing Miss Sheila a small bag of food. "I heard the shots. I wanted to run over, but I was too scared." Carla looked toward the hallway where the kids were playing. "You know, I saw him come back earlier that day. He looked angry, like he was talking to someone on the phone, yelling." Miss Sheila frowned. "Talking to who?" "I don't know," Carla said quietly. "But I saw another car parked a few houses down. I didn't recognize it." That made Miss Sheila uneasy. The police report had said Gregory came home alone before the shooting. But if someone else had been there, who were they? That night, she went through Takara's belongings, hoping to find clues. Inside her daughter's purse, she found a small notebook, the cover torn, the pages filled with messy handwriting. It looked like a journal. She hesitated before opening it, her hands trembling. On the first page, written in bold letters, were the words, "If anything happens to me, it's because I tried to leave." Miss Sheila gasped. Her eyes filled with tears as she flipped through the pages. Takara had written about everything, the threats, the fear, the nights she hid in the kids' room because Gregory had been drinking and angry. She even mentioned talking to Navy supervisors about the abuse, begging them for help. One entry stood out. "He told me if I ruin his career, he'll ruin my life. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm scared every day." Miss Sheila's heart pounded. She knew her daughter had been brave, but reading those words made her realize how desperate Takara had been. The next morning, she went to the Navy recruiting office where Gregory had worked. The building was quiet, the flag outside, flapping in the breeze. A young officer met her at the door. "Ma'am, we're deeply sorry for your loss," he said politely. But Miss Sheila wasn't looking for sympathy. "Did anyone report his behavior? My daughter tried to tell someone what was happening. Did anyone listen?" He hesitated. "Ma'am, I'm not allowed to discuss personnel matters." Her voice rose.
My daughter is dead. She died holding her baby. Don't tell me you can't discuss it." He looked down, avoiding her eyes. "I'm sorry," he muttered. Miss Sheila turned and walked out, tears streaming down her face. She felt powerless, like she was fighting a wall that refused to move. Later that week, she met with a lawyer who agreed to help her file a lawsuit against the U.S. Navy. The lawyer explained, if Takara reported the abuse and the Navy ignored it, they failed to protect her. But Miss Sheila wasn't doing it for money. She wanted accountability. She wanted someone to finally say, we should have helped her. Still, there were unanswered questions that kept her up at night. The mysterious car, the missing phone that police hadn't found, and the calm way Gregory had turned himself in, as if he knew exactly what to do. When she finally saw him on TV during his first court appearance, she froze. His face was blank, no tears, no guilt, just cold. Reporters shouted questions. "Gregory, why did you do it? Do you have anything to say to your children?"
He stayed silent, only whispering something to his lawyer before being led away. Miss Sheila turned off the TV, shaking her head. How could someone who once said he loved her become this? That night, as the house grew quiet again, she sat on the porch, clutching the notebook. The moon hung low in the sky, and a soft breeze carried the sound of crickets. She opened to the last page her daughter wrote. It read, "If I don't make it out, tell my kids I love them. Tell Mama not to give up." Tears blurred her vision as she closed the notebook. "I won't give up, baby. I promise." But deep inside, something told her there was more to uncover, something the world hadn't heard yet. And when the Navy's legal team called the next morning to discuss a settlement, she knew one thing for sure. They were trying to keep something quiet. As Miss Sheila hung up the phone, she looked out the window where her grandkids were playing in the yard. For the first time, a spark of determination replaced her tears. She wasn't just a grieving mother anymore. She was becoming a fighter. The courthouse in downtown Houston was packed the morning the case began. Reporters stood outside with cameras, their microphones ready. People wanted answers. How could a U.S. Navy recruiter murder his wife while she held their baby, and how could no one stop it? Inside, Miss Sheila sat quietly in the front row, clutching a photo of Takara. The picture showed her daughter smiling, her arms around her children. It was that smile, bright and full of hope, that gave Miss Sheila the strength to face what was coming. Across the room sat Gregory Hightower, his hands cuffed, his Navy uniform replaced by a plain orange jumpsuit. He looked calm, almost detached. His eyes didn't meet Miss Sheila's. When the judge asked him to stand, he did so without emotion, replying only with short, "Yes, sir," answers. As the prosecutor spoke, the courtroom fell silent. On September 22, 2022, the defendant, Gregory Hightower, shot and killed his wife, Takara Glenn Hightower, in front of their infant child. Mrs. Hightower was in the process of filing an abuse complaint at the time of the incident. Gasps filled the room. Miss Sheila closed her eyes as tears streamed down her cheeks. The prosecutor continued, "This tragedy was not sudden. It was the result of repeated violence and ignored warnings. Multiple people, friends, neighbors, even Navy officials were aware of her situation, yet no one intervened in time." He paused, then added, "And because of that, 6 innocent children lost their mother." The defense attorney argued that Gregory had been under stress from his career and had
lost control. But the evidence told another story. Takara's notebook, her text messages, and her reports to authorities all showed a pattern of fear and abuse. When the prosecutor read Takara's final note aloud, "If anything happens to me, it's because I tried to leave," even the judge looked shaken. Miss Sheila held the notebook close to her chest, whispering under her breath, "They hear you now, baby." During a break in the trial, a journalist approached Miss Sheila. "Ma'am," she said softly, "many people are watching this case. What do you want them to understand?" Miss Sheila took a deep breath before answering. "I want people to know that my daughter tried. She asked for help, but she was ignored. If her voice had been heard, she'd still be alive. No woman should die trying to protect her children." Her words spread fast across TV stations, newspapers, and social media. Soon, the hashtag Justice for Takara began trending again. Women from across the country shared their own stories of surviving abuse and being ignored by the system.
But for Miss Sheila, it wasn't about fame or headlines. It was about her grandkids, the 6 little faces that looked to her every night, asking questions she couldn't always answer. Weeks later, the jury returned with the verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. As the judge read the sentence, life in prison without parole, Miss Sheila didn't cheer. She simply bowed her head, her hands shaking. Justice had come, but it didn't bring peace. Nothing could bring back her daughter. After the trial, she took the children to visit Takara's grave for the first time since the funeral. The small headstone was surrounded by flowers and notes from friends. The oldest child, just 13, placed a drawing on the ground, a picture of their mother holding a baby surrounded by hearts. "She's watching us, right, Grandma?" the child asked. Miss Sheila nodded, her eyes glistening. "She's always watching, and she's proud of you." As the wind rustled through the trees, she looked up at the sky. "You didn't die in vain," she whispered. "Your story will save others." In the months that followed, Miss Sheila became an advocate for domestic violence awareness. She spoke at churches, schools, and women's centers across Texas, telling Takara's story to anyone who would listen. Her message was simple: don't ignore the signs, don't stay silent. The lawsuit against the Navy continued, and although the legal battle was long and exhausting, it began sparking change in how military-related domestic abuse cases were handled. For Miss Sheila, that was the victory her daughter deserved. One evening, a year after the tragedy, she sat on the porch watching the kids play in the yard, laughter filling the air once more. The baby, now walking, stumbled toward her with open arms. She scooped the child up and smiled softly. "You look just like your mama," she said, kissing the baby's forehead. For the first time in a long time, Miss Sheila felt something she hadn't felt since that awful night: peace. Takara's story had begun in tragedy, but it ended in strength. A mother's voice that refused to be silenced, carried on by the woman who raised her and the children she left behind. As the sun set over Houston, the light faded into gold and purple hues. Miss Sheila looked up at the sky one more time and whispered, "Rest now, baby girl. Mama kept her promise." And with that, she rocked the baby gently in her arms, the same way Takara once did, as the world around them grew quiet and the stars began to shine.